Good morning. I'm very happy to be here today in Etobicoke Lakeshore, standing alongside Lee Fairclough, who's running for our party in this community. I know, Lee, how hard you and your team have been working now for a number of weeks, and I know that you, Lee, and the rest of our candidates across Ontario are hearing the same message that I'm hearing in all of my travels and all of my touring about how people are gravely concerned about issues relating to community safety. We know that over the last number of months, the incidence of carjackings, violent carjackings and auto thefts has been sharply on the rise here in the GTA and right across the province of Ontario. Now just think about this for a moment. You know, you're going out to see a movie with friends, or you're heading out to a restaurant with your family, especially as we are trying to get back into a kind of new normal at this stage of what we've all had to go through over the past 2 years. And suddenly, without any warning, at gunpoint, you are forced to give up your car. I can't even begin to imagine how scary that must be for the individuals who've had to face that kind of brutal, difficult situation. And you think about the fact that here in Ontario, it should not be too much to ask that you can have the kind of safety in neighborhoods like this one here in Etobicoke Lakeshore, my home community of Vaughan, and elsewhere. We see how the numbers are rising when it comes in particular to violent carjackings. If I'm not mistaken, so far this year, Toronto police have reported 93 violent carjackings here in this city. When you take that into account, last year, there were a total of 103. You see, and I'm sad to say this, that we are well on our way to far exceeding last year's totals. That's inaction on this particular issue is not good enough. And inaction, by the way, is what we see from the Ford Conservatives. I think about what the City of Toronto has done on this issue. We've heard Mayor Tory speak about this quite clearly, and we know that the City of Toronto passed an important resolution or motion last December where they called on the province to strike an auto theft task force so that police services could work together, along with Crown attorneys, to make sure that all of the resources that need to be dedicated to keeping people safe in this province were actually brought to bear. And where's Doug Ford been on this issue? He's been absolutely silent, absolutely missing in action, absolutely gone into hiding on an issue that is spiraling out of control on his watch. He is someone who has consistently said that he will not engage in trying to ban handguns. He has basically ignored the City of Toronto's request for an auto theft task force. And yet again, we see the numbers going in the wrong direction. And that's why Ontario Liberals are so determined to confront this challenge head on. We're not going to wait. We're not going to go into hiding. We're not going to be missing in action the way that Doug Ford is on this critically important issue. When the people of this province are afraid because they might lose their vehicles at gunpoint, they might have to face violence or even worse. It is simply not good enough for our leaders to say that nothing can be done, to throw up their hands, cozy up to the gun lobby the way that Doug Ford does consistently, and to do nothing. Ontario Liberals have a different plan. As I announced a number of days ago, if elected on June 2nd, we will pursue and deliver on a handgun ban across this province. We will work with the federal government, and I'm delighted to know that the federal government is open to funding a buyback program to help us get the guns out of Ontario, the handguns out of Ontario. Ontario, under our leadership, will lead a national discussion on a national handgun ban so that we don't have guns flowing into this province from other provinces. And I also want to highlight that an Ontario Liberal government would urgently move to strike an auto theft task force so that police services, including the Toronto Police Service, the rest across this province, and our Crown attorneys, our Crown prosecutors, could be properly resourced to go right at this issue head on. And let me just say, the women and men who work on our police forces, they are doing their best to deal with these challenging situations, and I know that. But what's missing is real leadership from Doug Ford on this, who'd rather sit on the sidelines, cozy up to the gun lobby, do nothing, while people here in Etobicoke and across Ontario have to face the risk, potentially, of being approached and attacked, people using handguns to steal their cars, to carjack. That is not the Ontario that I believe in. That is not the Ontario that we're fighting to deliver for you. And that's why, come June 2nd, people in this province have a clear choice between Doug Ford on one side, who wants to go into hiding and do nothing to deal with the epic increase in carjackings that we see in Ontario right now, doesn't want to do the handgun ban, and the Ontario Liberals who want to keep you and your family and this province safe. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Can you address what measures you would take to address the clustering of weed retailers in the growing cannabis sector?
Yeah, so we know that it's a significant challenge in many communities. You literally drive around Etobicoke, drive around other parts of the GTA and elsewhere, and you see that. We know that in other provinces they have moved forward with building in minimum distances that are required, similar to what's required, for example, around schools and other important public institutions. So we would pursue the same thing, working with our municipal partners at all times to make sure that the clustering that you referenced was no longer the case. It is one of the side effects, if I can put it this way, of the way that the Ford Conservatives dealt with the distribution of legalized cannabis. It's not good enough. Just having it be a random, arbitrary process, not good enough. That's why Ontario Liberals will take action to make sure that clustering is dealt with responsibly.
And your policy on limiting clusters of weed retailers only applies to areas like Toronto, where there's a surplus of options. How would you address areas that are underserved?
I couldn't hear the first part of your question, sorry.
Your policy on limiting clusters of weed retailers only applies to areas like Toronto, where there's a surplus of options. How would you address areas that are underserved?
So again, I think we'd be looking at this more broadly. I know it certainly exists in Toronto, but it's not limited to Toronto. I see it in York region, my home region. I see it in Richmond Hill and Markham and elsewhere. See it here in Etobicoke as well. So we would be wanting to work with our municipal partners to make sure that clustering is dealt with in a responsible way, and that we have a distribution system in place that actually helps keep people safe at the same time as adhering to what, of course, is now legalized cannabis. So I couldn't hear the first part.
What further measures would you enact to further curtail the illegal weed market and to build up the legal weed market?
Look, I think that we're at a place in the province now where, because the legalization of cannabis has been in place now from the federal government for a number of years, where by and large the industry has done a good job working with government to make sure that illegal cannabis which was a serious concern before, is no longer in the marketplace to the same extent, especially for the youngest people in Ontario. But we still have an issue, as you pointed out, around clustering. That's why the Ontario Liberal plan will take a responsible approach, not the hands-off kind of devil-may-care approach of the Ford Conservatives. So whether we're talking about this issue, clustering of cannabis stores or options, or we're talking about handgun bans and the violent carjackings that we continue to see, Ontario Liberals will be responsible as we confront these challenges to keep people in this province safe, which is, one of the most important responsibilities that a premier is supposed to have, instead of consistently going into hiding the way that Doug Ford does. Thank you.